A warm hello to everybody who has joined me in the third video on Knowledge Spell. If you have witnessed my first two videos, that is Introduction to Hematology and second Blood Grouping and Transfusion, you will get my third video better. So for those who have not joined, please have a look at those as well. Now today I'm going to talk about a new topic which is very elaborate, used in many different ways and has got a very important practical applicability in understanding the blood, the connective tissue, the dynamic fluid carrier of everything in our body from within outside, within itself. Hemocytometry. As I always tell my students in medical science to split the words and understand the meanings. Hemo is blood, cyto is cell, and metry is to measure. So today we are going to measure the cells of the blood and deduce important things. An important note that I would like to make is that in today's times, we have a lot of huge machines, the semi-auto analyzers and auto analyzers, which would just count these cells in a very short duration without any human effort. But still, hemocytometry is an essential part of curriculum of medical physiology and hematology across the globe. And the reason is that unless each one of us has a clear look at the behavior of these cells, their appearance, how things actually happen, we cannot do it successfully by merely reading the reports. So let's begin. This talk would include an introduction to hemocytometry, followed by a detailed description of the improved Newber's chamber. Now there have been apparatus that were used earlier, but in today's times we have this super glass slide called the improved Newber's chamber, which we will be detailing in relation to the different types of cells. We will have a brief look into how we do this measuring part in the different small and big chambers of the Newber's counting chamber. We will also ponder upon the variations in the cell counts and the dilution factors, followed by the clinical impacts, and finally the precautions that we have to take while doing hemocytometry. So let me tell you that when we are doing the different practicals of hemocytometry, our purpose is to count the normal cell in the blood. In the hemocytometry, we count the RBCs, that is the red blood cells or erythrocytes, but it is kind of discouraged because of the large number of the erythrocytes. Still, I will be telling you how it has to be done. We also count the WBCs, that is the leukocytes. We count the platelets or the thrombocytes and also the eosinophils. Now the counting basic is that we dilute with a fluid, and the property of the fluid I will be telling you along with the practical or the details, and the chamber has to be used in accordance with the number of the cells which are present in blood. So let us begin straight away. I'll share my screen. So here we begin with hemocytometry. As I explained to you, hemocytometry is a measurement of the cells in the blood. Now, since we have all seen our blood, it is a composition of cells in a very large number and it is very compact. So one thing which is very essential for doing this hemocytometry is to understand the nature and constitution of this blood. Now, what is hemocytometry? It is a technique used to enumerate the total count in the blood or other biological body fluids. This can be done either by using a hemocytometer or by electronic cell counter. Here,
We are going to do it in the laboratories for our first year medical students. So we will be using a hemocytometer. We also have semi-auto analyzers in our department and auto analyzers in the hospitals, but we are going to experiment it with the hemocytometer prima facie. Now, the purpose of this practical is to find out that in certain pathological conditions, the value of the cell varies. And these variations have got certain significances. So first we have to learn to extract the blood. Then we have to use this blood to count the cells. And then we have to interpret the results which we have obtained after counting these cells. Broadly speaking, why do we do this cell count or the hemocytometry? First is to find out the normal and abnormal count of cells. Say, for example, if I have a count of 9 in my eosinophils, it is a very, very high count. That is almost double of its normal count. So, it is alarming and indicative of certain pathology in relation to the eosinophils. Whereas in case of RBCs, if I have a count of say 4.3 millions per cubic mm in a female, then 4.5 million and above we consider normal. So 4.3 million is not very significant. So little efforts at the clinical level can help to improve it. Now, in order to support and confirm the clinical diagnosis of patients, we all know that COVID is the pandemic of this century. And right now, a very important clinical marker is the neutrophil is to lymphocyte ratio. So this ratio again we get from the cell counting. Very significant it is. So we have to support our clinical diagnosis with these cell counts. We are able to find out the duration of the infection largely if we get the neutrophil and lymphocyte count. It was chronic or it was acute. Now, we also determine the responses of the patients to the different treatments that have been provided. Say, for example, there was a condition in which the WBCs were suppressed. Bone marrow was suppressed due to certain medications. So it becomes an urgent necessity to increase it or to improve it. And so the cell count will tell us where we are going or how we are responding to the desired treatment. Now, the principle of cell counting is, first, we have to dilute the blood with appropriate known volume of diluting fluid, and then the counting is done by the hemocytometer. So everybody has to be very attentive here. We have to extract peripheral blood as we do for all hematology practicals. The volume of blood has to be very little. We use the different pipettes. We have seen in the laboratory that a WBC pipette is different from an RBC pipette and so on. So these pipettes are not marked with milliliters or microliters. These are standardized graduations. So we have to take it up to a specific mark. Now the specific mark is an indication of the fact that this amount of blood diluted with this amount of diluting fluid, which is specific to studying those particular cells. Say, for example, I am adding the WBC dilution fluid. So this dilution fluid will make sure that the WBCs are visible and all other cells of the blood are not visible. So it becomes not only easy, but it also becomes very logical to study the blood which is fresh in nature immediately extracted and which is a very good indication of our clinical conditions. So we will first be taking the blood, the fresh blood, filling it in the desired volume in the specific pipette till the specific mark, mixing it with the dilution fluid, which is specific to the cell to be studied, keeping it properly so that there is a good reaction between the dilution fluid and blood, and then charging our super instrument, the improved Newbur's counting chamber. And once we charge the Newbur's counting chamber, these cells become visible under the microscope, and this is how we go about it. Now, the hemocytometer, as the name suggests, hemo is blood, cyto is cell, and meter is something used to measure. So it is the instrument used for counting the cells in blood or the fluid. It has a special instrument called the counting chamber. Now here we'll be using the improved Newber's counting chamber. In order to charge it, we have to place a cover slip on it. And this cover slip is a regular cover slip used in the medical laboratories, a small square or round piece of glass, which is clean, grease-free, a pipette for diluting the blood, that is, the apparatus, the pipe-like structure in which we suck the blood to a specific mark and then mix the dilution fluid, a mouthpiece for drawing blood or pipette or fluid in the pipette. The counting chamber. Now, what is a counting chamber exactly? It's a thick glass slide, and the center of this glass slide has two metallic troughs, two metallic structures which are containing the graduated grids. Now, these two graduated grids, I'll show you in the diagrams that follow, are very well separated by gutters or areas which are dug in such a way that the extra fluid may go down. Okay, so let me come to the diagram, it becomes clear. So this is the improved Newber's counting chamber. You all can see this, and this is the part which is used to hold. It is a thick glass slide. These are the two counting areas. Each Newber's counting chamber has two counting areas. Just in case we dirty or anyhow are not able to use one side, we can use the other. Here are the gutters 1, 2, and 3. In these three gutters, the extra fluid, if any, the blood and the dilution fluid will flow down. This is the part where we keep the cover slip. And once we keep the cover slip here, with the help of the tip of the pipette, we bring it here and just touch a drop of blood and mixed dilution fluid, and it spreads all across this counting area, forming a thin layer by the capillary action. And now we move ahead with the counting process under the microscope. So what is the speciality of this improved Newber's counting chamber? In this, the triple lines which divide the central square are very much closer to each other. I would first I'll read this and then explain you with the help of a diagram. The central ruled area is divided into 25 large squares. These squares are subdivided into 16 smaller squares, each with an area of 1 by 400 square meter. The depth of the improved Newber's chamber is 0.1 mm. Now look at this improved Newber's chamber. Again, the depth would be the distance between the cover slip which you will place here and this chamber, which is the metallic part having the grid. This metallic part has an etching of grid over it, which is totally graduated, totally measured. Now this 0.1 mm is the depth. That is the depth of the blood film which is going to be formed. And the length and the width we know very well, because this grid which is here, which we are going to see under the microscope, is already a calculated thing. Now let me enlarge it to some extent. Each of the two metallic grids will look like this. The central part is this, which is used to count the RBCs. This has got 5 by 5, that is 25 squares. Each of the 25 squares has got 16 small squares, 4 by 4. This area which has got 4 by 4, that is 16 small squares, is the WBC counting area. So now if we see, we can clearly understand that it has 1, 2, 3, and 4 WBC counting areas. That is 16 into 4, that is 64 small squares to count the WBCs. And it has here so many squares, out of which we use one small square with 16. This last one, the second, this third one here, this fourth one here, and the central. So we are using only 5 small squares containing 16 into 5, that is 80 smallest squares to count the RBC. Now you will ask me, why am I counting the RBCs in such a large number of smaller squares and the WBCs in a smaller number of small squares, not the smallest squares? Because the WBC normal count is 4,000 to 12,000 per cubic mm of blood, much lesser than the RBC count, which is 4.5 to 5.5 millions per cubic mm of blood. And so to have a clearer view so that the RBCs do not overlap, I need to dilute it many, many more times. The RBC dilution fluid is 200 times the blood volume, whereas the WBC dilution fluid is only 20 times the blood volume. So again, looking at the total grid once again, if we divide it, it is 3 mm like this from here to here and 3 mm from here to here. It's a square. In this 3 mm, 1 mm is this, the WBC area. This is the 1 mm which leads to the RBC counting area. And this is again the WBC counting area. Now this, and this. These areas with only parallel lines are the waste areas or the non-counting areas. And the grid is designed in such a way that the counting areas do not overlap or cross over, and so we can count with assurance. It should be with clarity and the number should be very correctly measured. Now, what is the cover glass or the cover slip? It's a special cover glass which has a very smooth flattened surface and even thickness. See, here you can see this is the cover glass. And this is a beautiful diagram. You can see this glass chamber, these gutters here, this raised part of the grid where we have one grid here and the other grid there. Both are the counting areas. We put the cover slip here, and this is the edge of the glass area, and the cover slip and the glass area here in between this specimen insertion where it is written. Here we touch the droplet of the blood mixed with dilution fluid, and it spreads across this entire part, forms a very thin layer, and the extra part flows into these gutters. So cover slips may be of different thickness. It's not very important out here. We use the normal regular cover slip available in the laboratories. So this is the entire setup which we have to form. And before we form this, we have to already fix or focus our microscope. Now let me tell you that when you have to see the cells in low power of the microscope, keep the aperture low, keep the objectives low. And when you have to see in the high power, bring the objectives high. And when you have to see in the oil immersion, you put one droplet of oil on the slide, dip your objective lens into the oil and only move upwards, only in the upward direction to get the focus. This is a secret. If you learn this, you can focus every slide in the laboratory. Now have a deeper look at it. This is the whole grid. I have enlarged it totally. As I told you, each side is 1 mm. This is also 1 mm. This is also 1 mm. This is also 1 mm. And this is also 1 mm. This has 16 small squares in total. This is the WBC counting area. This is the non-counting zone. But again, the non-counting zone is 1 mm. Here again, we have a repetition of the same. And in this central one, this, and this out here are exactly the same. And this is the RBC counting area, 1 mm by 1 mm. And the depth we all know is 0.1 mm for all. So the depth remains alike because the space between the cover slip and the glass slide is the same. So here we divide every small square into 16. But out of these small squares, we are not taking all the 25 small squares. We are taking 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is 80 smaller squares for RBC counting. You have to see this video again and again. Focus your Newber's chamber in the microscope. Listen to my description, see the representation over there, and then you will get a very clear picture of it. Here, once you focus, your eye will have this kind of a picture. So if you have parallel lines here, you understand it's the non-counting area. If you have squares, it's the counting area. Again, now this is what I have focused. This is the WBC counting which we were doing, and I focused it in the lower power. And here you can see that in these it's the RBC. It's the RBC counting. And here you can see in a small square with 16 smaller squares, every smallest square has a fixed number of RBCs. Now, which cells do we count and which we do not? Before that, let me tell you that the normal dilution which we use in our laboratories is, for RBC count, we dilute it 200 times. That is 1 part of blood and 200 parts of the dilution fluid. That is the Haems fluid. This Haems fluid is such that we are able to visualize the RBCs but no other cells. Now the platelet count we also know is very high. So again, we diluted 200 times. Rees and Ecker fluid. WBC count is much lower and eosinophil is even much lower than that. So for them, we only dilute 20 times. Turk's fluid and the Dunger's fluid or the eosinophil dilution fluid. Now here, I want to show you which cells you will be taking in which square. So suppose this is a compendium of either a small square to count the WBCs or the smallest square to count the RBCs. Doesn't make any difference. But we have a law that every cell which is present on the upper and left border has to be counted in that chamber. And every cell which is overlapping on the lower and right margin will be counted in the next square, so that we do not count the same cells again, and hence we give out or we come out with a more accurate reading. I will repeat, cells present on the upper margin and on the left border are counted in the same cell, whereas the cells present in the right margin or the lower margin are counted in the next cell. Now, how do we perform the calculations? It is not possible to explain the calculations of all the cell counting here, but I'm trying to give you a general formula and it will be of super help. Whatever cell number you get from the desired cells, in WBCs, say for example, from the 64 small cells, you get a number X. Your dilution factor was 20. So cell count will be the number of cells into the dilution factor. And then you have to take out the volume of, the number of cells per cubic mm of blood. So the first secret is that whatever you get from that particular amount of squares which you have counted, you have to multiply it with the dilution factor, because we had diluted the blood, and then we convert it into the volume of blood in cubic millimeters. This we will be doing again in the laboratories repeatedly. I've just given you a brief idea of the normal counts. Go ahead, keep studying, you will get much more to understand. Would not be detailing much about the interpretations because it is not a very important part of the first year curriculum, but there are certain indications at large which we get from the cell counts. And you may have a look at it, you may read them, you may even memorize them, so that in your second prof, third prof, you will come to know the practical applicability. Say, for example, there is a disease called dengue. It's a viral fever. What? It's a viral fever. And last year we had an epidemic of dengue in the north part of our country. And there we observed that the WBC count falls first and the platelet counts keeps falling. So the platelet count is the deciding factor in dengue hemorrhagic fever. And it is the key to prescription. It is the key to management. And it is the key to determining the prognosis. How will the patient go about it? Similar happens in certain anemias, certain cancers, and a lot of things. So it is very, very important for us to know the cell counts. Now, similarly, the eosinophil count is significant in allergic conditions. You will have a lot of people telling you that they have allergies. This word everybody tends to use and doesn't understand what it actually means. But anyways, for us, eosinophil count becomes very important and particularly to determine the allergic conditions. Cell counts of the blood are very, very important to determine the role of the bone marrow in producing or making the cells. So we have to determine the aplastic conditions, why the bone marrow is suppressed. There are people who are continuously exposed to radiations. Their profession is such. And so we have to keep an eye on the counts very importantly. Now, there are certain precautions or important things which we have to always keep in mind whenever we are performing a cell count in the laboratory. We have to avoid any bubbles because we are taking a very, very small amount of blood. And a single bubble can largely affect our cell counts. So bubbles should not come. For my dear students, to get a practice on not trapping bubbles in the pipettes, I would suggest that every time you prick your finger, or ideally you collect blood from a vein and then you collect it in a bottle, you mix an anticoagulant as we do in the laboratories, and you dip the nozzle, the tip entirely into the blood and gradually suck it. Don't over suck it. Gradually suck it, but the tip of your pipette should not come in the air. And once you suck it, if there is little extra, first you wipe out the tip of the pipette so that no extra blood is there. And then you release the end of the pipe of the pipette. And when you release it, the extra blood flows out. So you have to be particular, or you have to be very, very careful while collecting blood. And this comes with practice. In our laboratories, we give students water in a beaker and we give them pipettes and we ask them to practice with it. And when they do it 50, 60 times, they become perfect. And there is, no error while doing the practical. Now, while charging the chamber, don't overflow it, because then it becomes an erroneous reading. It dirties the cover slip from the upper part also. And extra would definitely flow in the gutters, but the upper part of the cover slip would have that fluid. And in case you put a little fluid over there, or you feel that you have overcharged it, use a small piece of a filter paper or a blotting paper just to touch and remove the extra thing. Okay. Cell counts, to get best results, should be done by a single person in a very, very systematic manner. Either you move up like this across the smaller squares, like this, like this, like this, like this. So this pattern helps you to get an access to all the cells. You don't miss out on any cells. You don't repeat counting anything. Calculations, you have to understand very logically. I understand you're not students of mathematics, but we all have done it till class 10. And this calculation is very, very important. And your microscope should be very clean, properly maintained, and properly focused. There should be no confusion between cells and artifacts. There's one more clue which I want to give you all, guys, is that when you are counting cells with nuclei and without nuclei. So when you are counting cells with nuclei, like the WBCs, you get a very beautiful, and the eosinophils, you get a very beautiful appearance of the regular nucleus. And identification of the cell becomes very easy. But when you are counting a cell without a nuclei, like the RBCs and the platelets, you just move the fine adjustment little up and down, and you will see a sparkling shadow of the liquid material inside the cell, of the cytoplasm of the cell. So that glitter, that shine will tell you whether it is a cell or an artifact. And a cell has a regular boundary, whereas artifacts have irregular boundaries. So you have to repeat each of these practicals many, many times to get a grip over it. So I hope I was able to convey the basic principles of hemocytometry to you. This was the third in my series of Knowledge Spell, in which I'm talking about the importance of different practicals and different procedures which we are using in the laboratories. Hope it works out. See you again with my next knowledge spell in the coming week. Thank you.